Hello, and welcome to part 2 of Soulless Beings, a philosophical thought experiment presented in the form of Sean Black's article. Okay, next part. He discusses an important breakdown from the article written by Tom Montauk, who discusses the difference between soul, etheric and astral, and spirit, followed by body and ego, and the interrelationship of them all. Sean Black wants to add a disclaimer here, saying that he's not saying this is the definitive edition. Buddhists view it differently, so do the Christians, and many arguments can be had about the definitions. But he says it serves as a half-decent framework for the next phase of this discourse, which will be much larger in scope. He also wants to add a disclaimer that there will be a fair amount of people who will say that Jesus Christ is the way, the one way, and nothing but the way, and everything else is satanic. And while that may be so, for the interest of omnispheric discourse, he will keep the range of thought wide open. I will now read the article paragraphs from Tom Montauk's article. Paragraph 1. Body and soul. Aside from spirit, the other components are body and soul. Soul is the non-physical energetic interface between body and spirit. Occultists divide the soul into the etheric and astral bodies. The aforementioned empty people have bodies and souls, but not spirits. In this way, it is clear that they have some kind of conscious energy, but the permanent core that retains continuity, can't say that word, through incarnation. So the continuous permanent core that allows incarnations. The soul consists of two components, the etheric and astral. The etheric component is a quantum biasing field that keeps the physical body from entropic disintegration, or to put it more simply, it is a life force energy that keeps the body from decaying. The astral component is more abstract and intangible. It functions as the seat of consciously experienced feelings and passions. Feelings are not just chemical reactions in the brain, nor are they abstract thoughts in the mind. Rather, they are vivid energies residing somewhere in between. And that buffer zone between the completely physical and completely metaphysical is the astral component of the soul. To summarize, occultists divide the soul into etheric and astral body. So there's two components of the soul according to occult esoteric knowledge. So the soul is made up of etheric and astral bodies. Next paragraph. Body and ego. The body is the biological instrument through which we interact with our physical environment. The body comes with its own hereditary dispositions, biological drives and instincts, and behavioral algorithms stamped into it through social programming. These deterministic influences converge to create an artificial intelligence in a person that, by default, runs the body like an autopilot computer running an airplane. This artificial intelligence is hereby termed ego. Its fundamental purpose is to ensure survival of the body by optimizing its behavior for the surrounding physical and social environment. In other words, external conditioning programs the ego to achieve survival in the environment from which that conditioning originates. But the ego has no true consciousness of its own, physical or spiritual influences upon the soul. Now, the soul, in residing between body and spirit and mediating between them, is influenced by both. So the soul is influenced by both the body and the spirit. It takes on its organization and function according to impulses from both spirit and the body. For instance, the astral body would respond both to a chemical drug inducing a feeling of euphoria through the body, and the spirit volitionally invoking a lofty feeling of spiritual joy, although the effects on the astral are not identical. Consequences of lacking a spirit. With the preceding in mind, consider what happens when someone has body, ego, and soul, but lacks spirit. First and foremost, their entire makeup would be the result of material influences like genetics and environment. The seat of their apparent intelligence would be the ego, and without the counterweight of spirit, their ego would reign king. Thus, in accordance with the function of ego, such people would be completely dedicated to material and social survival. Notice that people with spirit who are awake to their spiritual impulses often make willful choices that serve no financial, social, or egotistic gains, that go against the expectations of Darwinian evolutionary principles, and that serve only spiritual ends. Such impulses are absent in spiritless people, thus they are truly optimized for survival in the physical world. Without conscious empathy or inner battle between ego and spirit holding them back, they can more quickly and easily succeed in their worldly environments, regardless of the cost to others. So can we categorize into the following? There are souled human beings with ego. Lower soul keeps the body from experiencing entropy, meaning decaying. 2. There are souled human beings with spirit, connection to God with the potential to reach God consciousness. And 3. There are souled human beings that are possessed. I don't know. But what I do know is that the entirety of humanity cannot just be lumped into one pot. And we can just say, well, we're all entirely the same and we just need Jesus, then everything will be great. The next and final for now part of this excursion is the big one. It will probably branch off into a million different segments. So then Sean Black talks about how he's going to post 3 quotes of the article upon which the article is built, or at least refers back to throughout the article. It's a huge article from 2011 that is well worth the read. It goes into many different branches from philosophy, teachings, channelings, but also and especially into the nature of organic portals, which are human beings that actually don't have a soul and that merely mimic us spirited human beings. There are many different types, harmless and psychopathic ones. But while many people tend to just try to use a medical description, oh, they're just sociopaths, they're just psychopaths, they're just narcissists, all these labels come from the BS and fraudulent areas of psychology and psychoanalysis that do not or rarely or deeply into the soul consciousness spirit complex, as opposed to, say, a shaman or whatever. This is why I am also dissatisfied when family members might just put up another family member, as we've seen during the vid off as, oh, he's just a narcissist, I believe there is way more to it than some Rockefeller pathology description that fits within this, now outdated world view. Scientism. Okay, quote 1 by G.I. Gurdjieff. I don't know how to pronounce that wrong. A considerable percentage of the people we meet on the street are people who are empty inside. That is, they are actually already dead. It is fortunate for us that we do not see and do not know it. If we knew what a number of people are actually dead and what a number of these dead people govern our lives, we should go mad with horror. Quote 2 by Sri Aurobindo, The Hidden Forces of Life. There are some human beings who are like vampires. What are they and why are they like that? They are not human. There is only a human form or appearance. They are incarnations of beings from the world that is just next to the physical. Beings who live on the plane which we call the vital world. It is a world of all the desires and impulses and passions and of movements, of violence and greed and cunning and every kind of ignorance. But all the dynamisms too are there. All the life energies and all the powers. The beings of this world have by their nature a strange grip over the material world and can exercise upon it a sinister influence. Some of them are formed out of the remains of the human being that persist after death in the vital atmosphere near to the earth plane. His desires and hungers still float there and remain in form even after the dissolution of the body. Often they are moved to go on manifesting and satisfying themselves, and the birth of these creatures of the vital world is the consequence. But these are minor beings, and, if they can be very troublesome, it is yet not impossible to deal with them. There are others far more dangerous who have never been in human form, never were they born into a human body upon earth, for most often they refuse to accept this way of birth because it is slavery to matter, and they prefer to remain in their own world, powerful and mischievous, and to control earthly beings from there. For if they do not want to be born on earth, they do want to be in contact with the physical nature, but without being bound by it. Their method is to try first to cast their influence upon a man. Then they enter slowly into his atmosphere and in the end may get complete possession of him, driving out entirely the real human soul and personality. These creatures, when in possession of an earthly body, may have the human appearance, but they have not a human nature. Their habit is to draw upon the life force of human beings. They attack and capture vital power wherever they can and feed upon it. If they come into your atmosphere, you suddenly feel depressed and exhausted. If you are near them for some time, you fall sick. If you live with one of them, it may kill you. But how is one to get such creatures out of one's environment when they are once there? The vital power incarnated in these beings is of a very material kind, and it is effective only within a short distance. Ordinarily, if you do not live in the same house, or if you are not in the same company with them, you do not come within their influence. But if you open some channel of connection or communication through letters, for example, then you make possible an interchange of forces and are liable to be influenced by them even from a far distance. The wisest way with these beings is to cut off all connection and have nothing to do with them, unless indeed you have great occult knowledge and power and have learned how to cover and protect yourself. But even then, it is always a dangerous thing to move about with them. To hope to transform them, as some people do, is a vain illusion, for they do not want to be transformed. They have no intention of allowing any transformation, and all effort in that direction is useless. These beings, when in the human body, are not often conscious of what they really are. Sometimes they have a vague feeling that they are not quite human in the ordinary way, but still there are cases where they are conscious and very conscious. Not only do they know that they do not belong to humanity, but they know what they are, act in that knowledge, and deliberately pursue their ends. The beings of the vital world are powerful by their very nature. When to their power they add knowledge, they become doubly dangerous. There is nothing to be done with these creatures. You should avoid having any dealings with them unless you have the power to crush and destroy them. If you are forced into contact with them, be aware of the spell they can cast. These are vital beings. When they manifest on the physical plane, have always a great hypnotic power, for the center of their consciousness is in the vital world and not in the material, and they are not veiled and dwarfed by the material consciousness as human beings are. And the final quote, quote 3, by Dr. Rudolf Steiner from Faculty Meetings, Volume 2, July 1923. Quote, Dr. Rudolf Steiner says, "That little girl, LK, in the first grade must have something really wrong inside. There is not much we can do. Such cases are increasing in which children are born with a human form but are not really human beings in relation to their highest I. Instead, they are filled with beings that do not belong to the human class. Quite a number of people have been born since the 90s without an I. That is, they are not reincarnated, but are human forms filled with a sort of natural demon. There are quite a large number of older people going around who are actually not human beings, but are only natural. They are human beings only in regard to their form. We cannot, however, create a school for demons." A teacher responds, "How is that possible?" Dr. Rudolf Steiner replies, "Cosmic error is certainly not impossible. The relationships of individuals coming into earthly existence have long been determined. There are also generations in which individuals have no desire to come into earthly existence and be connected with physicality, or immediately leave at the very beginning. In such cases, other beings that are not quite suited step in. This is something that is now quite common, that human beings go around without an I. The I as in the capital I as in yourself. I am. They are actually not human beings, but have only a human form. They are beings like nature spirits, which we do not recognize as such because they go around in a human form. They are also quite different from human beings in regard to everything spiritual. The riddle of life is not so simple. When such a being dies, it returns to nature from which it came. The corpse decays, but there is no real dissolution of the etheric body, and the nature being returns to nature. It is also possible that something like an automation could occur. The entire human organism exists, and it might be possible to automate the brain and develop a kind of pseudo-morality. I do not like to talk about such things, since we have often been attacked even without them. Imagine what people would say if they heard that we say there are people who are not human beings. Nevertheless, these are facts. Our culture would not be in such a decline if people felt more strongly that a number of people are going around who, because they are completely ruthless, have become something that is not human, but instead are demons in human form. So this was from 1923. Okay, so I'm going to end that part 2 there, and I will continue in the final part 3. Thank you for listening. Bye for now.